things is in Islam, our method of salvation is not the same as any other religion. You are very much held accountable for what you do. Although your actions will not save you on a day of judgment, you're still very much accountable for what you do, because your actions can throw you in hell. They won't help you, but they can sure put you in hell. What makes all the difference to be saved, or salvation of Islam, is what your intentions were. What was in your heart when you did it. Because sometimes people are forced to do something they didn't want to do it. Okay, and that would be awarded or punished accordingly in Islam. And sometimes people really want to do something, but they're not able to do it. And if you don't mind to give you an example, I love to talk about the life of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. He tells us that, to give an example, he said there was a man, and I think he was talking about the time of the Samaritans, which would be around Jesus' time, peace be upon him. He said there was a man who was passing along, and he found some people who had nothing. There was a little community of people, and they had nothing. They were starving to death. And as a traveler, of course, he has nothing to offer. And he saw a mountain, and he said, I wish I had provisions the size of this mountain. I would like to give it to these people. Then on the day of judgment, when he comes, he finds there's a huge mountain of provisions equal to that in reward for him. He said, this is not mine. I didn't do such a thing as this. I didn't give charity equal to that. And he'll be told, but you wanted to. Your sincerity and your intention is what you're going to be rewarded for. So one of the things Muslims are encouraged, not only to do good deeds, but to be aware that if I could do more, I would even do more than that, because you're going to be rewarded accordingly. I didn't really start learning about the Prophet Muhammad in detail, peace be upon him, until much later. As a matter of fact, after I entered into Islam, I've been Muslim for about 3 or 4 months, I guess, something like that. And I met a gentleman who was a young college student. And I remember him almost like challenged me at one point. He said, you have to love Allah with all your heart and everything, be totally committed. And I said, well, of course I do. As a Christian, I did. That's part of being a Christian. You have to love God with all your heart and all your mind and all your strength. This is in chapter 12 of the Gospel of Mark. And it's also in Deuteronomy. It's not something small. This is a big deal. And at the same time, he said you have to also love the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, the same way, more than yourself. And I said, how do I love somebody I don't even know? I said, I'm willing to learn, but I'm not going to lie. I'm just not going to tell you I do, because I don't know who you're talking about. I know he's the Prophet of Islam. I know the Quran comes with him, but as far as the details, I don't know. So I began to study, and then even recently, like last year, I was working more on this subject to get more knowledge, more knowledge. There are many biographies of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. It turns out, worldwide today, there are no other human beings on earth that have more written about them than Muhammad, peace be upon him. But I didn't know any of that. And non-Muslim sources writing about him in very favorable ways, George Bernard Shaw, the Dalai Lama, and also from in India, Mahatma Gandhi, and President Nelson Mandela. All of them have said many wonderful things about Muhammad and Muhammad's ways and his negotiating abilities, the way he ran the state, the way that he was as a governor, as he was a prophet, and you know, he was more than just a religious man, he was a total statesman. So there's a lot to learn about him. There's misinformation out there too as well, but that's to be expected. As I was saying in a program earlier today, that whenever you empty a container out, it's not really empty. It's empty from that, but it's not empty. For instance, if you had a bottle of Coke, you pour out all the Coke, you say it's empty. To you it's empty because what you want to be in there is a liquid, but it's full of air. And as long as you take something out, something else will come in. And when Muslims do not present information about Muhammad, peace be upon him, then there's a vacuum there. and others will fill that vacuum very quickly. So it's up to the Muslims. If they want to have a good job done, it's up to them to do it, which, by the way, is exactly why we have this program here today for you, so that we can provide that kind of information. It's our responsibility. And you, as a journalist, you'd like to write something today, right? Well, if there's nothing happening over here, you look over on the other side and write whatever's there. And that's your job. So even if you said, well, it's not very reliable, it's something. And even if it's not very positive, it's better than nothing. I got a job to do. I'm going to write something. So the Muslims are very guilty, actually, because when you consider they are the largest, or at least second largest, of groups of human beings on the earth, as far as faith is concerned, yet they've done maybe the least in the last 100 years or so. Now, they have some excuses, and we could talk about that. They don't have a caliph anymore since 1922. We could talk about, you know, the political oppression, the oppression in various countries, and scenarios that Muslims have been suffering with. But the bottom line is really there's no real excuse for this. There's no reason. They're just lame excuses. If you're alive and breathing, you're able to communicate, you should be doing that. And talking about Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, is a very special thing to do. And I encourage you, as a Muslim, to encourage all the Muslims here to get out there and do that, learn, and then explain. It's a very, very good topic. There are two words I want to make a real clear distinction between, and that's the word Islam and the word Muslim. I want to explain to you exactly what each of the two words mean. Therefore, you'll be able to understand it in English, because they're not English words, and they do not translate to English with a single word. They need at least a phrase or perhaps even a paragraph to carry the meaning. The first word is Islam. Islam means 5 things, and they're all in this word. And it doesn't work without, if one of these words is not there, then it's not the word Islam anymore. Because we have a word in Arabic for peace. It's called salam. We have a word for a form of surrender, which is aslam. And there is taslim and istislam. But when you say Islam, it contains these 5 English words and more. Surrender. The word surrender is very clear. The word submission is there after surrender. And in chronological order, the next one is obedience, and then sincerity, and finally in peace. And the meaning here would be that you surrender your free choices to the will of God, and you submit to His commandments and terms. Then you obey those commandments according to your agreement, your submission. And then you do so in sincerity, whether someone else is watching or not. You're not doing it to show off. And if nobody's there, you're still going to fulfill your commitment. You're still going to be the person you're supposed to be. And then finally, peace. And it's peace meaning from your side that you're going to be at peace with whatever He gives you. Now, the example for the Christian to be able to understand this is found in the beautiful prayer of Jesus, peace be upon him, on Gethsemane, when he says, "Let this cup pass from me," because he's praying and asking God not to put him through what he knows is about to come about, which is that the horrible altercation between the Romans and this small group of Jews which he is leading, which we call them Christians today, but by the way, they were never called Christians until Antioch, according to the Bible itself. So they were still called followers of the Messiah or Messihi, and in Arabic they're still called that today. So in any case, I have to digress sometimes to be sure you understand other words as well. But this makes it clear to us that he is asking for this not to come to him. Let this cup pass from me, even so. And now listen to this, even so, your will be done. Now in the Old English, Elizabethan English, they use the term T-H-Y, thy will be done, but it means your. That's just the way that Shakespearean English was at the time, or Elizabethan English. So what we want to emphasize here is that this peace in Islam means that whatever God gives you, you're going to say, even so, God's will be done, and that's how it is. When the tsunami came to India, I was there. And when the big hurricanes hit Florida a year back, I was there. And when the big Katrina went through, I wasn't there. I got out of one of them anyway. But I went there afterwards. And I found, as you would expect in all conditions, people were very distraught, upset, wondering, why did this have to happen to me? How come this took place? Where is God when we need him? After the events of 9/11, an act of terrorism, of course, on my own country, and I was, by the way, an eyewitness to the Pentagon. I was standing on top of my own building overlooking the area in Falls Church, Virginia, and I could see the Pentagon burning. And I know how the people were there because I could, hear them talking. How come this is happening to us? What did we do? How come? How come? And this was being said immediately. And it continued. That we were hearing that in a lot of places for a long time. This is normal. People say that. Why is this happening? Where is God when we need him? A journalist, television journalist type with a microphone and camera, is out in the street looking for a story and decided, here's a good opportunity for me, and got a Catholic priest and the rabbi from the Jews, from a synagogue, to sit together in a little scenario there for a conference type thing. And he says, I want to ask a question to both of you. And my first, he says, my question to the first of you would be to the Catholic priest. He said, I'd like to ask you about God. Can you tell me about God? And he said, God is love, and God is good, and God is great. And this is something that the Christians, Catholic or otherwise, say that. That's true. That's what they say. And he said, okay, so God is good, right? Yes. And he said, so if God is good, what about the events of 9/11? Where was God through all of this? Did God do this? He said, absolutely not. This isn't, God is good, he would never do this. He said, well, then who did it? Where did this come from, if not from God? He said it came from the devil. The devil did it. Well, a Muslim will chuckle right away when they hear that, because as you'll see in a minute, that would be ridiculous. Now he turned then to the rabbi and he asked the rabbi the same question. He said, did the devil do this? He's asking, did the devil do it? He said, no, the devil did not do it. God did it, and we hate it, and we hate God for doing it, and you should hate God for what he did. That was his that's what he said. It was published, it was on television. Now, if you understand their background, you can understand how they come to this conclusion. The teaching for the Jewish in the Old Testament is rather clear. They are a chosen group by their blood descendancy. They are the saved group to them. And they see themselves as more or less going through the earth, trying to take dominion over the earth, but God keeps allowing complications to their problem, such as the 40 years they spent out in the wilderness because of worshiping the golden calf. And they're saying, well, why we ought to go through all this stuff? And you're punishing us. And they even have the idea that Adam's sin is being passed on to them. And from generation to generation, and all these sins are being passed on, and these newborn babies are catching all this sin, and it's all because of what Adam did. So it's sort of a mentality of blame, constantly blaming. And if you doubt what I said, I would share with you that you could visit with a psychiatrist about it, because they even joke about the Jewish mentality of blaming. And these are Jewish psychiatrists, by the way, saying this very thing, like the Jewish mother who is telling you eat more chicken soup and that when you get sick, and she's constantly, well, you don't never do this, well, you don't know, how come, why, and this is a mentality of blaming. Okay, and then we'll come back to the Christian mentality. Now they're picking up some of what they have from the Old Testament, from the teaching there, and then a little bit more that they pick up, though, from the New Testament, which has a little different twist on the picture. For them, God is love. And of course, love never does anything which would be hated. Therefore, you can see why the priest said, well, God couldn't have done it because God is love. So, but it did happen, so how will you explain it now? Well, God couldn't help it because the devil just stepped in and did it. Okay, just like he stepped in and messed up Adam and Eve. So it makes sense that that's where he would get his idea from. Now I must mention too that what one priest says doesn't really represent the whole church. And what one rabbi doesn't represent all of the nation of Israel. That would be very wrong to accept that kind of a concept. And I wish the people in the media business would realize that holds true for Muslims as well. Just because one guy from Texas sitting here says something doesn't mean anything, okay? You shouldn't take that without reference. I will try now to give you the reference for what we have. If you would ask me the same question, what happened on 9/11? Was it an act of terror? Yes, it was. Absolutely, no doubt. From a religious point of view, and that's not my personal point of view. It is my personal point of view, but that's not where I'm taking it from. And if you go to the Quran, you will find a word that's used in the Quran, which is a very serious word. Acts of aggression and oppression are referred to in Arabic as dhulm. And this is very, very bad. And Allah said that He forbids Himself to ever commit dhulm. And He hates when people do it. Got it? Then there's another word used in the Quran, which is fitna, and fitna best describes the events that take place in extreme oppression and terror. So when you look to the Quran and you find this word in Arabic, fitna, or a form of the word fitna, then you will understand this is referring to these acts, which could even include terrorism, kidnapping, hijacking, murder, and all the rest of it. All of that could come under the umbrella of this word fitna, okay? But all of it is still in Allah's power. He allows things to happen as a test, but He does not share His power with the devil or anyone else. We don't have a triune God. And in this case, it'd be if you have Father, Son, Holy Ghost, and then the devil's having power too. You see, that becomes a square instead of a triangle because you got too many people in there. So, but for the rabbi, he's just saying essentially that God has all the power, which is what the Muslims definitely believe, but they're blaming Him for what happens. Whereas we're saying there are two possibilities, either from our own sins, from our own wrongdoings, we are being punished by God, which He did punish the children of Israel, and He does punish the Muslims for their wrongdoing. Or /and could be also a test. And He speaks about this not once or twice, but throughout the entire Quran. He warns the believers, "O you who believe, guard yourselves and your families and your children against a fire whose fuel is men and stones." Well, understanding that, I see I'm going to be going through a test here. Obviously, why did He tell me about this fire coming up if it's not a possibility that I could wind up there? But there's a way to guard myself. Now, how do I guard myself against it? And He tells us in the Quran that it's through correct belief and correct actions. And this correct belief is to admit there really is God. But along with that, you would not be able to blame God nor the people. You would have to, if you want to blame anybody, you blame yourself. If there's blame to be placed, you blame yourself. And Muslims, good Muslims, know that. And that's why when anything occurs that's really out of their control, it's really horrible or something like that, they don't say, "Oh God, why are you doing this to me?" Instead, what they will say is, "Astaghfirullah, Allah forgive me." Or "La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah." There's no might or power than that of Almighty Allah. I want to share with you a real event that really took place and how bad the media treated this event. And that was when the Egyptian airline went down. Do you remember that? When the Egyptian airline that had all the Egyptian generals and officers and everything in it? Okay. Someone reported that this was must be an act of terrorism, and the pilot was the terrorist, and he took all these people down to the Davy Jones locker, down to the bottom, and drowned them all. That's what they said. And their proof was that he said, as the plane is going down, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un, or he said what I said earlier, la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. They did not release it, but they referred to it. We know by the way they referred to it, he said one of these two things. The same way that if a Christian was hanging a painting on the wall or something, and they would be tapping on the hammer, on the nail, you know, and then miss and hit their thumb, what would they say? Well, some people might use a cuss word. They might, but they might say, oh, Jesus, or oh, God, or oh, you know, whatever you said is a reflex. And likewise, the reflex of the Muslim in the condition of a pilot going down would have absolutely been, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un, from Allah we came, and to Allah is our return. Or he said, La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah, there's no might or power except that of Allah. Because that's what you're supposed to say in those conditions. Because even if you die, at least you died believing in Him. Now there's a phrase like this in the Bible talking about Pharaoh. Now Pharaoh was the enemy to the Jews. We know that. There's no doubt in anybody's mind that the sons of Israel, Beni Israel, was highly persecuted by Pharaoh. Now, in the Bible and in the Quran, both relate the story of the dividing of the water by Moses, and they go through the water, and as they're going through, here comes Pharaoh and his gang, changed their mind, they're going to persecute them anyway, going to haul them back, they're going to have to go be slaves again. But Allah makes it so that they're able to escape through this passage of water, they get to the other side, then Allah closes the water in on Pharaoh and drowns him and his group, right? Everybody know the story? Okay. But what we have in the Quran is not in the Bible anymore. What happened to it, who knows? But the words from Pharaoh are very clear. He said, now I believe in the God of Moses. He said it. But this is the best example to show us, this is the best example to show us what is real salvation. Because at the very last minute for somebody to say it doesn't work. Even the angels were going to him to try to stop him from saying it because they said, this is a horrible man. This horrible man doesn't have the right, after doing all these terrible things, and then at the last minute just say, I changed my mind, I believe in God, now you have to save me. No. No, there's no good intention here. The man knows he's dying, and he just says, you know, I believe in the God of Moses. But so it didn't work. It doesn't work like that. So the same way, now we'll look at us as Muslims and viewing acts of terrorism. The proper response for the Muslim in acts of terrorism immediately, of course, is defend yourself. If somebody's terrorizing you, you try to stop it. But if you can't stop it and it happens to you anyway, the next thing is not to start blaming, but to start realizing that this is from God and endure the best way you can. And then the next stage is when it's all over with, and this part almost everybody on earth forgot about. It's called forgiving. Now I'm amazed because I'm in a place here where that's been demonstrated. I wish that I would be here more and see more of you people, because when I landed here in South Africa, I was informed of the events that took place regarding the apartheid. And when they said President Mandela went onto the, now did I say his name correctly this time? I don't want anybody else to get mad at me, because I said his name, just Mandela. We say just Bush or Reagan, and they said I was doing the wrong thing. So I want to say President Nelson Mandela. I hope he doesn't get mad at me. I didn't know that. But I have highest respect. What I said about him is just like now with highest respect, so I hope you understand that. But when he said, we forgive the people, this is amazing. For Muslims, you should pay attention to this man because he's demonstrating what our religion has taught us. And for Christians, they should listen to what he said because he's saying what Jesus taught them as well. Allah tells us that, and it's clear, if you can't forgive people here, you will not be forgiven. You will not be. Do you mind if I share with you just this little story? It's so beautiful about this. We're talking about terrorism and Islam, but look at this story about Muhammad, peace be upon him. Once upon a time, he was sitting with his gathering in their mosque. He said to them, the next man who walks through this doorway will be somebody who will be in the paradise. So they said, oh, well, let's see who it is, and then, you know, we'll find out what he does. Somebody walked in, he didn't even know who he is. And then on another occasion, he said, the next man who walks through this doorway will be somebody of the paradise. Same man walked in again. And they said, who is this guy? So someone said, you know what, let me go find out. So he went to him and he said, excuse me, I'm having some difficulty with my father at home, and I'd like to stay at your house for a while. He said, sure. The Arab tradition is you stay 3 days and 3 nights in someone's home. They ask you no questions, not even your name. Just come and stay. That's their tradition, always has been. So that's what he did. He went there to stay. And while he was there, you know, he was watching everything the man did. Because if he has any act of worship that we don't have, we need to know what it is. Now, most of you know Muslims perform something called salah 5 times a day. We stand and bow and pray, and that's what we do. We fast on Mondays and Thursdays as a habit, but it's not forced on you. But we fast every year for a whole month called Ramadan. So he observed this man, and he found that this man's not even doing extra prayers or anything like that. And he said, what's going on? On the third night, he said, listen, I have to tell you something. I'm not really having a problem with my family at home at all, but I wanted to come and stay with you to see what it is you do. He said, why? He said, because our prophet, peace be upon him, told us the next man come through that door is from the paradise, and you walked in. And he said it again another time, and you walked in. It was the same thing. We want to know what you do that we didn't do. He said, I'm not as good as you guys. I don't do anything extra. I even, you know, I don't have any clue. I don't do anything. Minimum, that's it. He said, unless, now you know this is the rest of the story, right? He said, unless it might be that before I go to sleep at night, I totally clear away all of anything in my heart against anybody. I forgive everybody. So there you have it. There is your real secret to entering into paradise. You have to be able to forgive, and it has to be sincere. Not just something you say, okay, I forgive you. Turn your back and watch what I do. No, 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 no. This is not forgiveness. That's called strategy. But when I observed the many teachings of Muhammad, peace be upon him, in the way we have relations with other human beings, I realized that he had to be the best of all the psychiatrists that ever lived, because he was looking right straight into the soul of the human being and showing them where their problem is. And then at the same time, what the solution is and how to pull it out. And all of it begins by having the correct belief in God. Now, for an atheist, they're going to say, what are you talking about? What's that got to do with anything? A person can be nice without believing in God. I'm going to challenge that, because I'm going to tell you that nice will then depend on how you define the word. Because if you said, well, this is what's good, what's your definition of good? If a person is a masochist, one who likes to be punished and suffer at the hands of someone else, to them good is somebody beating them up. If a person is a sadist, one who likes to administer punishment, then good to him is getting to beat somebody up. Now, the only way this works for these two people is you put them in the same room, one beating the other, and they're both happy. But for the rest of us who don't subscribe to either philosophy, we're seeing that as sicko, man. True or false? So when the human being tries to define what's good, what's bad, it's going to vary from human to human, and from time period to time period, from condition to condition, and you're never, ever going to be able to resolve it. You can't. Now, one of the things that a lot of governments and politicians fear about Islam isn't the fact that we pray 5 times a day or that we abstain from eating and drinking. In fact, that's fine. You want to do that, go do it. The problem comes in that Islam calls for a government based on God's teachings. There's no difference between Islam and Judaism on this point. On this single point, they're the same. It must be according to God's teachings. If you doubt what I said, certainly you're welcome to look into the books of the Sharia of Islam and find that. And at the same time, look into the books of Moses, the first 5 books of the Protestant Bible, and you will find that these laws and mandates and commandments are most clear. And there's not 10, there are tens of hundreds of them. And they're telling you the commandment on the eating and the commandment on the dealing and punishments of people who violate various acts and what the punishments are and how to administer them, etc. So this is something that has to be looked at. And then you said, well, if you want to do everything on the earth according to God's will, then which God? Well, Islam said there's only one God. So it's what he said. And somebody could immediately say, well, what about the Hindu? He's got so many gods. Well, that would eliminate the Hindu gods, because if you're going to have 33,000 or 33 million, whatever, then obviously they'd have to go sort those gods. They'd have to sort it out for themselves, wouldn't they? But many Hindus that I have met, especially intelligent, educated Hindus, have told me that all of that aside, there really is only one God, and they only really believe in one. And at that stage, they're coming a lot closer to the monotheistic faith. Now, what would be the most logical if there is a God? This is taking the position here now of an antagonist, one who is like, playing with you on it, or one who is a agnostic, meaning that he believes there's a God, but he's not sure what, who, where, when, or how. Then in this case, you could say, well, if there's a God, it would be up to him to communicate to us what his commandments are. Wouldn't it be his responsibility? I mean, how would I even know where he is to go knock on the door and say, hey, are you busy? We'd like to know what's the commandments for today, So it's up to the people together to use those of knowledge, the people of knowledge that are willing to use rationale. You must use rationale. This is not something where you can just take 1 or 2 people who already have an agenda set up, but rather enough people who could look and use their mind, clear their mind, without prejudice. And believe me, I think South Africa is coming close to having the least amount of prejudice today, because I have seen people here really caring and trying and forgiving and working together. Then using these people, regardless of what their families are committed to. Maybe their families are all saying we're Christian or Hindus or whatever they are, I don't care. But if they're going to be rational people and approach it from a rational approach, and then say that we're going to use a clean slate, start from zero, and then use terms that are not going to be ambiguous. When we say this is up, then this is up. And we're not going to tomorrow say, well, it could also be up, and point the opposite way. And this is right. Well, no, that's left. No, this is left. Well, it could be both ways. It's a mystery. Who cares? Well, then you go back into these kind of faiths where how do you resolve that God is like this, but like that? And so if it's contradictory, then you reject it. It's as simple as that. So the statement that Islam makes to begin everything says there's only one God, and that's essential before you even go to the next point. You do not need to know anything else about Islam if you don't agree with that. Just toss the whole thing and walk away. Because everything in Islam has that as the foundation, because it's the only thing in the Sharia of Islam which is totally uncompromisable. And I'm not sure that's a word. I know compromise is, but uncompromisable. I'm going to have to look that one up.
We'll patent that word for you, sir.
And okay, then maybe we'll allocate that aside, and maybe they'll name it after me for figuring it out. But anyhow, Islam has actually, and some of you may not know this, but as hard and fast as the rules of Islam are, there are conditions which are immediately accepted to override. For instance, Muslims are forbidden in the Quran in many places not to eat pork. They mustn't eat the flesh of swine. Lahan khanzir, flesh of swine, is forbidden to all Muslims. It's forbidden to the Jews the same way. And so what would a person do if he was from the Jewish faith and he was starving to death and had no food to eat whatsoever? What would he do? According to his faith, if he's going to follow it, he'd just have to die. Or if he ate it, then he'd have to atone for some sins here for having done so. That's the best he could hope for. But Islam is real clear on this subject, that when there's nothing else to eat, he must eat pork to sustain his life. He must eat enough to keep himself alive. But whenever something else becomes available, then he would stop eating that and go back to eating what's called halal meat, or permitted or favorable food substance. He can eat the pork as long as he was maintaining his life as much as he had to, but he shouldn't pig out. Thank you for laughing at a very dumb joke. Now, the other things that hold are the same thing. It's very clear in Christianity that you forgive. There's a lot of forgiveness in there. However, there's not a balance there to show you where to draw the line. It's just all forgive, forgive, forgive. Somebody hits you on the one side of the face, you offer the other side of the face. So there isn't anything that I'm aware of in Christianity other than the statements of Jesus where he said that I did not come with peace, I came with a sword, I came to turn the daughter against the mother, and things like this. We do find that, but from the teachings of Paul and others, we don't find anything except tolerance and forgiveness, tolerance and forgiveness. This is good qualities to a point. But there are times when we can't tolerate anymore and you have to stand up. And again, I'm here in a place where you people know exactly what I'm talking about. When it's intolerable, then the people have to stand up and fight. Now, the Old Testament says it real clear. There's a time for peace and a time for war. It's very clear. And the same holds true in Islam. There's a time for peace, there's a time for war. When it's totally intolerable, there are several places in Surah Baqarah, chapter 2 and chapter 9, clearly outlining what the conditions for combat and war and the war against terrorism are all in there and outlined for us. And remember, our subject is about terrorism, so that's why I'm coming back to this again. And what's the problem here is it's not being defined properly in the English language by our scholars today. So again, you have a vacuum and people will fill it. Non-scholars, non-educated people, claiming to be Muslims, claiming to follow Islam, are committing acts that are intolerable and unacceptable and saying that they have justification from words in the Quran. And in some cases, they don't say it. They're just doing what they do. And then others, not Muslims, are saying, okay, this must be the verses where they got it from. And then they take an English or an Urdu or a Zulu translation of the Quran and say, see what it says, see what it says. The fact is, though, the words that they're referring to and the sentence they're referring to are very beautiful. And yes, it says, kill them. But that's not the end of the sentence. There's a comma. But if you stopped right there and just said, okay, kill them, kill what? I'm going to ask you to be fair and be honest right now. If a bunch of locusts or mosquitoes came flying into this room right now, would you sit there and be tolerant? Would you kill them? They're on you and they're eating you right now. Would you slap it and kill it? Or would you say, well, he's got to live too, you know? Be honest. So when it just says kill them, kill who? You didn't read the rest of it. Maybe it said mosquitoes. Why not take a chance to read the rest of the sentence? But I'm serious. What they did do, again, a vacuum created, so somebody filled the vacuum. They said kill them, and then they opened up parentheses, there's a vacuum for you, and stuck in there Christians and Jews, and then said wherever you find them. Kill them, Christians and Jews, wherever you find them. That's what it says on their websites, those who are saying Islam is terrorism. However, and they will say things like, if I challenge anybody to tell me the difference, you know, blah, 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 I'll take my website down if you can show me I'm wrong. We did, but they didn't take it down. We answered them totally and completely. And these are Arabs, by the way, Arab Christians who did it. But they're writing in English. We told them, well, just look at your own language. The word here, kill, was actually from kital. And kital has a wide meaning, a very wide meaning, like the word hit. The word hit, you assume what when you hear the word hit? It would depend on what you were talking about, wouldn't it? How does this hit you? How does this hit you? Huh? Or hit the mosquito. Huh? Or hit the mark. Or hit the target. We hit our goals today. I hit it all-time high. What are you talking about? Or hit the golf ball. So this word hit is very wide. And likewise, this word kill is very wide, because in the reference that's being used in the Quran, it directly means combat, except in one case it means mortal combat. Mortal means to kill. It means it's being ordered, kill them in combat. The other verses all say combat, combat, combat. So now let me go back to the verse that everybody misquotes. It says, and. That's how it starts. And means you should have read the verse before it. Well, they won't. They just say, kill them. Well, that's fine. Actually, what it's talking about, you go back to verse 189. I'm going to tell you where to start, in Surah Baqarah, chapter 2, verse 189, and read it for yourself. Because the people were asking Muhammad questions, peace be upon him, and these were in the later days after Islam had progressed to the extent that there were tens of thousands now of people following Islam. Not the original 80 or so people who were thrown out into the desert and left to die, because they were forbidden to fight. They couldn't kill anybody. They were not permitted to fight back, because it was a test for them. So they were asking these questions. First question they ask is about the new moons. How do we look at the new moons? Are these a superstition? Should we just avoid that, or what should we do? And Allah answered, Yasalunaka. They're asking you about the hilal, the new moons. Tell them that these are for them to cite the months of their pilgrimage, to go and make their pilgrimage. Ah, okay. Now watch this. They're also asking about entering their houses through the back doors, if this is good or proper or not. Because they had a superstition, if you went through the back door, you're more righteous than somebody walking through the front door of his own house. And in this case, Allah said, no, that's wrong. You should enter the house by the proper doors. Because righteousness is being, you know, a right kind of believer and then acting on that. That's real righteousness, is to believe and to do good works. Then he goes to the next subject they had asked about. When are we going to be able to make our pilgrimage? Because every time they had been down there, they had been beaten back. They had gone down in pilgrim garb, which is 2 towels, basically, and nothing, and walked all the way from Medina to Mecca, which is how far here? What could you compare that to here?
It's about 400 kilometers.
400 kilometers. A place, though, from where to where?
Yeah. Oh, from here to halfway Johannesburg almost. From Durban.
If you walked halfway from here to Johannesburg, that's what they're talking about. Is that a long way to go?
Yep.
Would you want to walk like that, and when you got there, find out that they're not going to let you go in and make your pilgrimage?
Wow.
And they have swords drawn, and you used to live there. That was your home, but they drove you out and took your land and took your property, even took members of your family as slaves. And that's the real case. Now I'm talking about people here, right here in South Africa. You know what I'm talking about. And no permission to do anything except stand there for 13 years. But now came this verse in the Quran saying, now go back and make your pilgrimage. And it says it. Go back, and you can go back now. It's time to do that. When the moons are sighted and it's time to go, you go, and now you have this permission. In fact, you have an order that you must fight them. That's the first word used, a form of qital. It says, fight them where they fight you, and turn them out from where they turned you out, and kill them in mortal combat when they kill you. But if they stop, you have to stop. Verily, Allah does not love the transgressors. So it immediately put a limit. So if somebody's not killing you, you can't kill them. Now we'll move to Surah Al-Tawbah, verse 29. You find essentially the same thing. All you got to do is go back a couple verses and you'll find it's also talking about Hajj the same way again, because they're related to the same topic. The Quran doesn't follow a chronological order, like this started on this day and then it goes through to the last day. No, because a person can open the Quran anywhere they want to and start reading, and Allah can guide them. It's as easy as that. So in verse 29 in Surah 9 or Surah Al-Tawbah, you will find verses there talking on the same subject and using the same word, qital, which means combat. This is the war against, and then it uses the word fitna. And I already told you fitna means what? Terrorism. So when people are terrorizing you and your family and driving you out, it's not an option. You have to stand up and be counted and fight against them until they stop, until normality can be brought to the situation, till people are free to worship and believe as they want. And that's what it says in the Arabic, not what some translators said. You've got to remember too, when translators translate, they're translating in the vernacular and in the atmosphere of their time, their place, and the way the language is being used. So if you're going to have translations, you're going to have to retranslate every so many years, because people change how they use the language. The Quran is alive. It is eternal. It does not change. But languages do. And if you speak Arabic, you can relate to the Quran at any time and see that it's talking about right now, just as it was talking about right then. But the languages change, the way we understand words change, but the Arabic for the Quran never changes. I'll give you one example of English and then we'll move on. When I was a boy in the 1940s, if I was excited, happy, and went running into my house and said, Mom, I want to come out and tell you something. I am gay. What would it have meant then? I'm happy. What would it mean today? And it's the exact same word used in the same sentence with a totally different connotation and meaning. Yes or no? And so, because languages are constantly doing that, it's a responsibility, again, of the Muslims, not the non-Muslim. This is a responsibility of the Muslims and their scholars to constantly look at these linguistic changes and then help and present the meanings on an ongoing basis so that people can understand. If you're going to live in this world as Muslims, you have the responsibility to keep conveying this message on a regular basis, and you cannot rest on your laurels on what someone has done in the past. I'll give you a quick explanation about what I just said there, and an example of what's happened with Islam and terrorism in the past, and that is in Muslim Spain. About 1,000 years ago, the scientists of Islam, and Islam includes science, most religions don't, but Islam not only includes science, it is responsible for bringing about a lot of the science we have today. Many of the big scholars in their various disciplines are well aware of what I just told you. And if you're in doubt about what I said, I realize you're lay people when it comes to the science. You're more than welcome to go to our website and find videos of real professors, real doctors in their particular disciplines explaining about these scientific evidences based on the Quran and the teaching of Muhammad 1,400 years ago. And they conclude unanimously, there's no way that this Quran could be from anybody other than God. And it was because of this conference that I'm telling you about now in the 1980s that the scientists today are coming up with something brand new. It has not been said in over 200 years. And that is that Darwin's theory is no good. And they're using a term called intelligent design. And it's, inshallah, God willing, it's a direct result of the efforts made by Sheikh Zandani when he brought those scientists together to study that. So again, Muslims, I'm telling you, you have the responsibility here at IPCI and in other places like this to use these centers for these evidences to help people understand. Because, and now here's the example, our word algebra today uses a letter to represent an unknown number, using a letter to come up with an unknown number. We know that's algebra, yes? Did you know, though, that it comes from algebra, the person who developed it? Whoops! How did we forget that? The word logarithm is from Arabic, AL. When you see AL in front of anything in science, alchemy, trying to deal with gold, turning gold out of something or getting gold plating, alchemy is also Arabic. So when you start looking at some of these sciences and study of the human anatomy, and you study and learn about the development of the fetus inside of the womb of the mother, and you said, my God, how could anybody know the trimesters back 1,400 years ago? And the same human being, it's all coming from one person, Muhammad, peace be upon him. How does he know about down here at the Cape, where the two seas come together and there's a barrier there that Jacques Cousteau talks about? And the same kind of barrier that occurs when the Mediterranean feeds into the Atlantic, and there's a barrier there. And this barrier never changes. Millions of years, it's still there. Now, if you took some salt water here and a different salinity of salt water here and put them two together, you could stir it up, and eventually, what, a few minutes, they would be the same, homogeneous, yes or no? But they have never, ever, ever become homogeneous. The temperatures and degrees on both sides are different. As you go down, they stay different. They increase in their difference instead of getting closer. And the density of the water is different. The life form is different. The plant life is different. And it stays different. Even the darkness levels do not stay the same. How is this possible? You didn't think about it. If I'm wrong, by the way, tell me. But if I'm right, then think about what I just said. And we do have plenty of evidences that we invite you to read a book called The Illustrated Guide to Understanding Islam. It has the pictures taken from science books, not from Muslims drawing pictures. Science books showing you what is believed today, and then the verses from the Quran showing you what it said then. And these people who read that and understood it, read what Allah said, have you not considered? And they was talking to the Muslims about this or that. So they began to consider it and looked at it. That milk from a cow or from a goat or from a sheep or from a camel comes from the conjunction of the blood in the intestine. Nobody knew that 1,400 years ago. Yet that's exactly where it comes from. Lightning. How is lightning caused? Do you know? Does anybody here know how lightning is actually formed? By the ionization of the molecules inside of a cloud. It's described in the Quran in detail. In detail. It's very simple. If you read it, you say, there it goes. It talks about how the water evaporates up, cloud forms, then these ice crystals form, and as they fall, they cause an electric charge. And then, as they evaporate and go back up, and then it keeps building and building and building until, boom, it discharges to a ground. And then that's lightning. And it describes this in the Quran in detail. There are many scientific evidences from the Quran to demonstrate this. Now you say, well, what's that got to do with terrorism? Watch this. The scientists of Islam became so, shall we say, confident in themselves and their teachings, they began to really reach out to all of Europe. And Europe used to send their children to be educated at these great institutes in Spain. We're talking about Spanish Muslims, 750 years. And in that time, it was so fantastic, such a learning center, that if any of the children in Europe could speak Arabic, it was considered, oh my God, your kids are right there on top, because they have the Arabic language. But then the Muslims did something. And I told you about alchemy. They were trying to find a way to use the science they found in the Quran to somehow alter the molecular structure of rocks and turn it into gold. Now, that sounds foolish today, doesn't it? Today, we're positive you cannot do that. But do you know how come we're positive? Because they explored every single possible avenue, and the evidence is there. You will never change molecular structure from one to another. It just won't do it. But how do we know that? It's because they proved it, trying to get this gold. They were so crazy about gold in those days. Not like now. We don't do that anymore. Do we? Yeah, we don't care much about gold and diamonds here. So, so they began to fight with each other. They set up little mini kingdoms, and the Muslims started killing each other, trying to take over each other's wealth and gold and kingdoms, until they started to employ the non-Muslims and Christians to help them fight against each other. And they had to pay them in gold. The Catholic Church heard about this golden opportunity and jumped right in on it and brought their soldiers over, and they were paid by one group of Muslims to fight another group until they were in a position to take over all of Spain. And in 1492, January the 12th, that's when the last Khalifa signed everything over to King Ferdinand. And the agreement said that they would not persecute the Muslims or try to change them. And they sure lived up to it. And if you don't believe it, get your encyclopedia and look up the word Inquisition and see how much the Catholics lived up to their promise. When they actually pulled people in half, ripped their skin off, and burned their eyes out because they wouldn't say God is three. That was the Inquisition. Now, I've described some terrorism to you in different forms, but all of it comes back to this. Allah is the one who lets it happen because of our sins and as a test. And if we would like to see life better on this earth, then it's up to us to turn back to the original creator and sustainer of everything, and then obey his commands. And I'm saying that to those who believe in God. If you say, well, I'm a Christian, I believe in God, then read your book. And if you say, well, I'm a Jew and I believe in God, read your book. And if you said, well, I'm a Hindu, well, guess what? They have a book too. And it tells them the same thing, if they want to really go back to the old scriptures. And we have this information available at IPCI right here if you want to look into the depth of that. But more than anybody else, I want to insist that the Muslims read your book. And you don't have to even read it if you don't know how to read and write. By the way, the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, didn't know how to read or write. So how could all this science come from him? And by the way, in such a beautiful form that it's easy to memorize, even for non-Arabs. 88% of all of the people today claiming to be Muslim are non-Arab. And 10 million human beings have totally memorized the Quran walking on the earth today. If you want to know what's the Quran, just ask one of them. It's not a matter of having a piece of paper in your hand and saying, this is it, no, this is it, I have this manuscript and that manuscript. You don't have to do that. Just ask any Hafiz of the Quran on earth. I've enjoyed being with all of you today. If you have more questions, IPCI is open here in regular business hours. If you'd like to come in and sit with them, talk with them, they have many publications, many responsible people here who can help you to come to determine what the correct answers is on these issues. We also have our website at islamalways.com, which is linked to our 6 other sites. That's islamalways.com, ISLAMALWAYS.com. Then for writing to us for questions, write to askislam@AOL.com. Till I have the next opportunity to be with all of you again, I ask for God's peace and guidance to be with you always. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Assalamu alaikum to my fellow brothers in Islam, and a very good evening to you, those who are non-Muslims. I'm very honoured to be here in Bloemfontein for the very first time. I've been in South Africa now for 2.5 years. So as I travelled through into your city tonight, it was a very charming city, very clean, and I'm very happy to be here. I've got quite a bit to say, but I'll just try and shorten it as much as I can before Isha Namaz. But if you'd asked me 3 years ago what I thought of Islam, what I thought of Muslims, I shan't exactly say what I thought. I think of you Muslims as, or Islam as a very good religion. But now look at me, completely changed. I often have to wake up and think, what's happened to me? And alhamdulillah, my background is a wildlife lecturer, and I am primarily what is known as a raptor biologist. I specialise in research in birds of prey, which has taken me throughout many parts of the world. Hence, my first trip to South Africa in 1998 in Johannesburg, there was a world conference here on birds of prey, and I met a very charming doctor called Mohammed Shobrak, a Muslim from Saudi, who invited me to go and study a species of vulture there. 3 years I spent in the kingdom, and on this particular occasion I heard the wonderful call of the Azan during Fajr. I heard the Azan for 3 years, but whoever was given this particular call during the Fajr Namaz, and I was down near the Yemen border, it completely changed my life. I was told on this last trip after the so-called 9/11 incident that my life was at risk, and it might be possible that I might not actually leave the kingdom alive. But alhamdulillah, on that very trip I became a Muslim, and since then I've decided to try and learn as much as I can about Deen. Hence I've come now to South Africa, and I'm now studying to become a alim. At the moment I'm just doing the Imam Khatib course. So I'm still new to Islam, and I've got a long way to go, and I still look at the Deen from a Western perspective. And the main thing that we have to understand is, and particularly for our non-Muslim guests, is, what is Islam? Islam is the most beautiful religion in the world. It is the only religion, and Islam is the religion of peace and love. Full stop, and that's all it is. Our Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, for those that aren't Muslims, when we mention Prophet, we will say peace be upon him. As regarding Muslims, we believe that Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was the last and the final messenger. And his only mission was to spread Islam around the world, and about peace and about love. So this is what Islam means. When I was a non-Muslim, many years ago at the age of 18, I was also training to become a Baptist preacher. And then it hit me, as I was studying the Bible, that I began to read the Old Testament, and I began to realise that the Old Testament was full of pornography, was full of incest, was full of drunkenness, was full of also so many disgusting things. And then we were told not to read the Old Testament, but to read the New Testament. And as I began to look at the New Testament, I began to see people such as John, Mark and Luke, and I'm thinking, who are these people? Because they don't give us the surnames. If we get stopped by the police on the roadside for speeding, and we say, or if they say, who are you? Let's have your ID or your passport, and you just say, Muhammad. They don't accept it. You must show them your full name. So I was looking at the Bible thinking, who is John? We don't have a surname. Who is Mark? We don't have a surname. Who is Luke? We don't have a surname. So I began to question this. Then when we look at the Bible, I compared maybe 3 or 4 different Bibles, and no Bible was the same. So I began to question this. And then it just got me thinking, and more, and then I began to look at the Trinity, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. We began to think, how can three be one? Whether you're Christian or you're a Muslim, we all believe in one God. But we were taught as Christians, there's three in one. Three can't be one. One is one. And when we used to read the prayer, Our Father, which art in heaven, our Father, one Father, which made God. So again, I began to ask many questions. If we look at Muslims today, you can see that the majority of Muslims, is a question that's often asked, why do we dress the way we are with our beards and our quarters? What we do as Muslims is we try and dress similar to the prophets. Every single prophet dressed just like us, and just like Jesus. And the people in the street as a non-Muslim say to me, why do you dress like this? The first answer I would give, because I love Jesus. I want to be like Jesus. Because Jesus had a beard, and Jesus dressed like this. So did Moses, so did Abraham, so did Noah, and so did the last prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. So if we look at Muslims and we look at what we believe in one God, and we call our God Allah. When we're born, we're all Muslims, but throughout life, our parents change us and diverge us into different directions. Jesus, Moses, all the prophets were Muslims. Every animal, every plant, every rock, every mineral, every bit of sand is Muslim. And Allah Ta'ala sent some 124,000 messengers to the world to spread this message that there is one God, only worship one God, one Allah. And we as Muslims, we believe in all the past books. We believe in the Psalms, we believe in the Injil, the New Testament, we believe in the Old Testament. But when I said to you, when I looked at the 4 different Bibles, as a Christian, each Bible was different. It would give a different answer. And the majority of the Bible was written by John. Over 27 books of the New Testament was written by John. John never met Jesus. So that disturbed me as well. And so we as Muslims believe that because the previous books have been disjointed and changed to suit particular people and different sects, etc., that Allah Ta'ala had to bring one more prophet, Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and the Quran. The Quran explains all the previous books. If you look at the Quran, if you can't understand Arabic, you read the English, it talks about the New Testament. The Quran is full about Jesus. The Quran is full about Mary, about Mary's life. But the Quran is guaranteed that it is the last book and it can never be altered, it can never be changed. This is one of the miracles that God, Allah Ta'ala, has brought down onto the Quran. When it was revealed to Prophet Muhammad some 1400 years ago, up until this day, even Allah Ta'ala, God says, if anyone try and produce one line, one ayat similar to the Quran. People have tried it and they cannot do it. No. It was produced in Arabic. But when Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, when he was speaking to the Arabs, to the actual Bedouins, what Allah Ta'ala was sending, they hadn't even heard this beautiful Arabic language. This is again a miracle. And if you don't understand Arabic and you read the English is not, it's as close as it can be, but the Arabic is such a magnificent language. This is why Allah Ta'ala revealed the Quran in Arabic. There's even words in the Quran that even today we still don't know the meaning of. Alif Lam Mim. We don't know the meaning of. This is again from Allah Ta'ala. So the non-Muslims read the Bible in English. The original Bible somewhere along the line is 100%. So if I'm saying to you as a Muslim, try and learn about the Quran through the English version, it gives you an idea of what the Quran is. I'm not saying to you it's 100%. Then how can a non-Muslim look at a Bible which is in English and say that's from God? It's been changed. Interestingly enough, just a few weeks ago, I read an article which was in one of the South African newspapers, which read, "The Catholic Church in the UK cast doubt on parts of the Bible. Genesis and the Revelation should not be taken literally," Bishop said. Even today with homosexuality now, which is not accepted in Christianity or even in Islam, they're now trying to introduce it and say it's okay. If we look at Islam, it's a complete way of life. Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, spread Islam around the world. Every action that we do, whether we sleep, we walk, we talk, we eat, we have intercourse with our wife, we work, we drive, we walk out the house, we come into the house, we sit down, there is a dua for every action that we do. The Quran is about the way of life. It's a book where Allah Ta'ala says to his creation, which is mankind, this is how I want you to lead your life on this earth. No. Go back to the prayer of Christians. Our Father which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done on earth as it is as in heaven. And one thing that the non-Muslims find that they cannot accept is what the Muslims are trying to do is to live the way that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to live, by following what we call is the sunnah, his lifestyle. But if you read the Christian prayer, in heaven as it, or as it as in heaven, there in that Christian prayer, God is saying, I want you to live on earth according to what my laws are. It's exactly the same. The Quran is full of, obviously, how we should live our life, but it's full of some fantastic scientific facts, from the mountains to how the human is born. There's scientific data that wasn't even known 1400 years ago. Now scientists are just beginning to understand about space and the planets and the sun and the sea and the oceans and flowers. But it was revealed in the Quran some 1400 years ago. And when scientists now look at this, scientists are accepting Islam straight away. The war on Islam is on us all the time now. And since 9/11 and since 7/7, everywhere we go, Muslims are regarded as terrorists. Whether Muslims were involved in 9/11 or 7/7, that remains to be seen. No one has yet been accused. Even now, they're speaking to certain American pilots who actually say no way could these planes have been hijacked by certain people, and even the hole in the actual Pentagon was too small for a 757. And when you have an airplane of a 757 crashing, and the only thing that's left is a black box, you have to sort of question, isn't it a coincidence that suddenly passports are just there on the ground, and the Muslim passports? And also in the tube disaster, on the BBC radio news they were saying they couldn't even identify many of the actual bodies. But isn't it strange that suddenly just there were the Muslim identifications of these actual people? Now whether the Muslims were involved in that, only God knows, only Allah Ta'ala knows. But no one has actually put any proof on it. But let's just say that they were involved. Can you wonder why some youngsters would do that sort of thing, if they did? Look at what, and you see if you watch the TV, the way Muslims now are being persecuted around the world. Millions and millions of women are being killed, they're being maimed, their children are being shot and killed. They're being raped So if a youngster is watching that, he will be affected. Although we don't, in Islam, terrorism and suicide is not accepted. But if someone is watching this and they see this happening to their brothers and sisters, even if he wasn't a Muslim, it would affect you. The war in Islam is generated by America, the main superpower. They now want to dominate the whole world. They want democracy around the whole world. Now they have destroyed communism, they now want to target Islam. And majority of even Americans now believe that what's happening now in Iraq is not correct. If we actually just go back to an article in 1948, a gentleman called Mr. George Kennan for the US Department of State in America, in a top secret policy planning study, Mr. Kennan in 1948 said, "We have about 50% of the world's wealth, but only 6.3% of its population. Our real task in the coming period is to devise a pattern of relationships which will permit us to maintain this position of disparity. To do so, we will have to dispense with all sentimentality. We should cease to talk about vague and unreal objectives such as human rights, the raising of living standards, and democracy." That was in 1948. The other thing that we hear about is Islamic fundamentalists. Ask anyone what do we mean by what do they mean by fundamentalists? No one knows what the word means. They won't talk to you about it. They won't give you a reason why they say it, what it is. But they say the problem is now facing the world is Islamic fundamentalists. Reverend Billy Graham, which is a very big Christian person, who is a Christian fundamentalist in America, was awarded the Congressional Gold Medal. He appeared numerous times on the front cover of Times, and he dined many times with President Clinton. He was, and it was written down as a Christian fundamentalist, but that was okay. But regarding to a Muslim fundamentalist, well, it changes. They say now that all Muslims are terrorists. If we look at the Oklahoma bombing, straight away we were accused. But who was behind the Oklahoma bombing? A Christian. They say now that one of the targets is that Islam is spread by the sword. Islam was never spread by the sword. It is impossible, even today, even you in front of me who are non-Muslims, for us to pressurize you to accept Islam. Islam is spread through all four corners of the world through love and through peace and through people accepting the truth. No one can force you to do anything. Islam is the fastest growing religion. Every time the West try and suppress Islam, Islam grows. After 9/11, the most sold book in the world, or particularly in the US, was in fact the Quran. And it's spreading because people want to know the truth, and once they find the truth, then they accept Islam. And in fact, the women of the world are accepting Islam more and more. Over 14,000 women have just accepted Islam over the last few years in Switzerland, and also in Russia, and also in England. Muslims many years ago ruled over Spain in Europe for over 736 years. After 8 centuries, the Muslims were eliminated by the non-Muslims, by the Christians. Not one Muslim was left. So if we ruled by the sword and by military power, why didn't we survive? We respect non-Muslims. In fact, one of the du'as we're asked to say while I'm actually studying is that a Muslim every day should actually wake up and say to God or to Allah Ta'ala that I am the worst of all Muslims. that every Muslim is better than me. Every animal, plant, rock, insect, flower is better than me, and every non-Muslim is better than me at present. We hold non-Muslims very high, because the reason is we don't know, and only God knows, that we're Muslim. But we could die as a non-Muslim, and those non-Muslims that we might not like could die as a Muslim. Look at me. For 40 years I was a non-Muslim, and I became a Muslim. So we must never look at non-Muslims in a bad way. In fact, in the Quran it says, and in various hadith by our Prophet Muhammad, we should look after our neighbours, even if they're non-Muslim. If they haven't got food, we should give food to them. We should care for them. When I was in Saudi Arabia, when I accepted Islam, and I said to you it's the fastest growing religion, I accepted Islam. In fact, I embraced Islam twice, and the second time was in the beautiful city of Taif. One of the sheikhs there actually said to me, Muhammad, we're in the centre of Saudi Arabia, but they come from all parts of the world here to accept Islam. As he said that, an 89-year-old American just walked through, he just accepted Islam. In front of me, in my eyes, was a desk, and on that desk was rows of cassettes. 3,500 American soldiers had embraced Islam after the first Gulf War, and the evidence was right in front of me. That would never be known to the Western people. Short time ago, I met a gentleman that was very close to a Muslim that's just passed away, Sheikh Hamid Didat. And he was a Roman Catholic, and he was sent by John Paul, Pope II, who passed away recently, some 35 years ago, to come here to South Africa and crush Sheikh Didat and to spread Christianity. He had a very strong personality, and for 6 years he was fighting Sheikh Didat. I'm not sure, obviously the Muslims know who Sheikh Didat is, I'm not sure the non-Muslims know, but he was well known, and he knew the Bible inside out, and he was doing tremendous work going and spreading Islam. He went down to Sheikh Didat's house every day for 6 years, and every time Sheikh Didat hit him hard with something from the actual Bible. One day, after coming back from the actual Vatican, and they kept saying go back and crush him and crush him, he said, I can't deal with this anymore, Sheikh Didat. I've had enough of you. I'm going to accept Islam. No. I met him again 2 weeks ago in Azadville, and he told me something that was absolutely amazing. I still am gobsmacked. He took me aside and he said, when I was a Roman Catholic, he was high up. He was working under a very famous Roman Catholic called Mother Teresa, who recently passed away. They were working in an African country, I won't mention the name, and she put him in charge of a food program. Now, they got the quotes of the food wrong, and the food went short, and he was having to push all the poor people away. Mother Teresa was there, and he called her over and he said, Mother Teresa, what do we do? We've got no food. Do you know what he told me? And I had tears in my eyes, and he also cried. She walked up to him very quietly, she looked to the left, she looked to the right, and she said to him very quietly, brother, recite Bismillah, which means in Islamic terms, in the name of Allah. He, as a Roman Catholic, could not deal with it, and he absolutely started crying. She just walked away. She went up to him very quietly, and he said, what do we do? We've got no food for the Christians, for the poor people. She, as a staunch Roman Catholic from the Vatican, said, recite Bismillah, and she walked away. It clearly shows you that even the bishops and the priests know the truth. If we look at the Bible, if you read the Bible in the English version, understanding that it's not the exact correct Bible, when we pray as Muslims, we pray 5 times a day. When I was on a flight to Kenya 2 years ago, I was sitting next to a Christian missionary, and he said to me, "I'm very amazed by you Muslims, and I respect you 100%. I'm a Christian missionary, and we only pray maybe once a week. You pray 5 times a day. It's absolutely amazing. I don't think us Christians could actually do that." If we look in the Bible, every prophet, read the English versions, every prophet, before they prayed, washed their hands and their feet, which is what we do as Muslims. Every Muslim, every prophet, from Moses, Abraham, Jesus, when they prayed to God, they knelt on the ground and they put their head to the foreground. Read it. The problem, unfortunately, with non-Muslims is they don't read the Bible. Read it. Also, when Muslims each year, they go to Saudi Arabia, to Mecca. And another name for Mecca is called Becca. And if you look in the Bible, that is also there. Another onslaught on Islam is the media attacks. And I must say to you, whatever you read on the newspapers or you see on TV, please don't accept it 100%. An article by Dorothy Gilliam in the Washington Post in December the 20th, 1997, she wrote, "Newsrooms that do not reflect American diversity do their readers an injustice. They fail to tell the stories of its citizens. They give readers a distorted image of themselves, and they grossly twist the reality of minority groups." This is by Dorothy Gilliam in the Washington Post. Another onslaught at the moment from President Bush and also my friend Tony Blair is they accuse that the so-called terrorists come from madrasas and darulooms. I was a non-Muslim, I'm a Muslim. I looked at madrasas and darulooms in the same light as Tony Blair told me. I'm now studying in a darulloom. I open the door to any of the non-Muslims to come into any madrasa, any darulloom and see for yourself. There is only love and peace there. That's all. That's all. The other onslaught against Islam is the hijab and this thing about we oppress women. I'd like to read another quick article for you. It was from, I'll just find it here quickly. Again, a few weeks ago. First of all, why do the Islamic women wear hijabs? Because what's happening now in Western culture is an increase in rape. In South Africa now, I think it's the second most largest country where rape is. We want to preserve our wives. In Islam, we regard our wives as queens. They're very precious to us, and they are for us. How many times, even as a non-Muslim, would we walk down the street, we would see a husband with a wife, or a boyfriend with a wife, half naked? It seems to be acceptable in Western culture for a woman to walk around in the street dressed in her bra and panties, or with tattoos all over her body, or half naked, or with rings everywhere. It seems to be acceptable. And you're allowed to ogle at her and think of sexual fantasies and start to undress her. That seems to be acceptable. But then when you find a woman in the full hijab, that doesn't seem to be acceptable. When I was teaching my students in England, when I just accepted Islam, they wanted to learn more about the hijab. When I was in Saudi, I was explaining that all of the shops in Saudi are probably more advanced in fashion than anywhere else in the world. All the women buy the Muslim women buy the most fashionable clothes. And it's beneath that hijab. But who is it for? For the husband. Something that's spreading now right around the world and now is increasing in South Africa is pornography. You start to look at a woman in the street, then you fantasize about it, and then you commit this evil act. One of the 10 commandments in Christianity is fornication. But before you get to the point of having sexual intercourse with someone or rape, Where does it start? It starts with the eyes. You have to make an eye contact with someone of the opposite sex to have any desire. In Islam, Rasulullah Sallallahu and Allah Ta'ala says to us, control our eyes. That our eyes are only for one person, which is our wife. A short time ago, there was a woman that wrote an article in the South African paper, and she put, Islam set me free. Grooming takes years off a woman, on how women waste about 2 years of their life on grooming and amusing themselves, putting their makeup on. In my previous life, how many times in my girlfriends, in my previous life, they used to say to me, Martin, you can't go outside until I put my face on. I couldn't understand, what do you mean by put your face on? By putting makeup on? Why would a woman want to put makeup on? Not to please the boyfriend, but to impress the opposite sex. Why would a woman want to be with her husband and boyfriend in the street in a short skirt? And even now, and I've seen in Westgate shopping centres in Joburg, just walking around in a bra. Is it to please the husband or boyfriend? It's to show the opposite sex. She says, I think this type of behaviour stems from an unhealthy outlook on life. Ever since I embraced Islam 7 years ago, I have found value in my time and discovered a freedom that I never enjoyed before. Now I wear the hijab. It gives me a sense of greater self-confidence. It gives me my dignity, and it saves me the sickening thought of trying to look attractive to every man in the street. The sickening thought of having to try and look attractive to every man in the street. Every woman in an office, in a non-Muslim environment, or in a bank situation, every 10 minutes the woman goes to the toilet to put makeup on, to impress the men and to impress the boss. She says, I realise that my real worth lies in my character and my personality. Now I have more quality time for my family, especially my kids, and a greater sense of loyalty to my husband. And of course I have 2 additional years to actually please my Creator. This is why we ask our women to wear their hijab, and it's been told to us to do that by our God and by Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Also, they're hitting us hard now in Islam that we shouldn't have 4 wives. Why are we allowed to have 4 wives? My students used to question me about that. It seems to be acceptable in a non-Muslim society for a man to have as many illicit relationships, even though he's married. To go home, he may have AIDS, he may have syphilis, he may have something else. It's acceptable even for a man, if he's married, to have a homosexual relationship, or even to fall madly in love with his own dog or cat. But to have 4 wives is not acceptable. Why did Allah Ta'ala, God, allow Muslims to have 4 wives? It's not compulsory, it's sunnah. It's because certain times a woman goes through certain times of the month and she can't have sexual intimacy, she may not be that way inclined, she may be pregnant. And in a non-Muslim environment, that's when the man will then move off to find someone else. He'll be seen in a massage parlour or an escort agency. But in Islam, it allows a man, if he can't find certain needs, to at least have a wife. But once he has a wife, he looks after her, he cares for her, he maintains her, he maintains children. In a non-Muslim environment, that doesn't happen. A man can be married with 2 children, he has so many affairs, he even has other children from other relationships. How often I've noticed 5 years down the line, there's a knock at the door, and the little boy says, Daddy, there's a young man at the door. He goes to the door, and the young man says, Hi, Dad. Do you remember me? The United Nations recently just said that Islam is an outdated, backward religion, the UN report in 2005. That our children are educated, our women are backward, there's no family unity. In fact, Hillary Clinton just bear with me. Hillary Clinton, the wife of the ex-president Clinton, wrote a book called It Takes a Village and Other Lessons Children Teach Us. She said that she has witnessed that there's an increase in the amount of women in the workplace and breakdown in family relationships. And she said that I think our country is in deep trouble. She offered this assessment: children's potential will last not very long. Crushing poverty, children's health, unaffordable care, children's hearts lost in desire over custody fights, children's future lost in overburdened foster care systems, children's lives lost in abuse and violence. Our society in itself is in a complete mess. This is a society in which, by her account, homicide and suicide kills almost 7,000 children each year in America. And 1 in 4 of all children are born to unmarried mothers in America, which is also happening now in England. A normal marriage in England as a non-Muslim will last no more than 3 years. 135,000 children in her book, she says, bring guns into school each day. Children in every social stratum deal with abuse and emotional problems. She says, if you bungle raising children, I don't think that whatever else you do matters much anymore. The United Nations in this report said that Islam is backward, that the Muslim world should take up all kinds of jobs outside the home. Regarding what we believe that our Muslim women should do, they should stay in the home and look after the children, and that's why the best thing we believe for our women. And just very briefly, before I end, the onslaughts against Islam will increase. Islam has been attacked for hundreds and hundreds of years, and it will continue to be attacked. Why will it be attacked? Because everyone knows in the world the truth. In reality, the non-Muslims know the truth. But it can never succeed because the Quran is the truth and Islam is the truth. And Allah Ta'ala, God, chose Islam as the true religion. These attacks will come and we must defend it and we must do our best. But Islam will never be defeated. So we as Muslims must hold our head high. Our duty is to take the truth of Islam and give it to the non-Muslims. 99% of true dawah, which means taking Islam, taking it to the white man's door, taking it to the black man's door as a non-Muslim, is not being done. The work that Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and the Sahaba done is not being done. The work of tabligh is for the Muslims. The work of dawah is not being done. I put a question to my fellow brothers here: who has the guts to stand up, to get a group of brothers and to go on a weekly basis to a white man's door or a black man's door, knock on the door and say, I'd like to talk to you about Islam? The missionaries do it, the Christians do it, the Jehovah's Witnesses do it, we must do it. Then we can have some idea, some taste of what our Prophet Muhammad went through and what the Sahaba went through. We are duty bound now as Muslims in this time of need to explain to the West what Islam is. We're not terrorists. There might be a minority that are giving us a bad name. That happens in all walks of life. May not. I said to you that with 9/11 and 7/7, no one has been actually accused. We must now take up the shield and go to the non-Muslims and tell them the truth, that Islam is a religion of peace. It's a religion of love. And those that are non-Muslims that are my guests tonight, please go home, think about what I've said, go to an Islamic shop, pick up an English version, look at it and read it. Allah Ta'ala says that it's not compulsory to become a Muslim. But just look around you, look at the world, look at the creation. And if you say to yourself there's one God, and you believe that Prophet Muhammad was the last and final messenger, then you've accepted Islam. Thank you for your time. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Nahmadu wa nusalli ala Rasulil Kareem amma ba'd. Our respected Maulana Adam, respected ulama, elders, brothers and sisters, mothers and fathers, friends, and brothers and sisters in humanity. We thank and praise God Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for this beautiful occasion, and we always enjoy the hospitality of the people of Bloemfontein. And for just to give a positive note for what Brother Muhammad said about da'wah, at least I can say, having grown up in this country under the apartheid regime, this town, Bloemfontein, Indians were not even allowed in this whole province of Free State. They were not even allowed in. I was coming in the car and I was telling Fahim and some of my friends a story, and we passed the town. On the way we were coming, there's a place called Senegal that's just after Bethlehem. And I'm talking in the 60s now, I don't want to give my age away, right? So in the 60s, we had to go to live. My uncle had a furniture factory, so he told me to accompany the driver, because Indians were not allowed into the Free State. I didn't know all this. I was, in metric, I was young. And we stopped there and they're offloading the furniture, and I'm seeing people from across the road, they're pointing, they're pointing. I think something wrong with the truck. I'm looking at the tires. They're all pointing. I said, maybe something wrong. What's wrong with the truck? I'm asking the driver, what's wrong with this truck? He said, no, they're looking at you. They haven't seen an Indian before. Because those poor people, those Afrikaners, they never went out of Senegal. They don't know what an Indian looks like. So look at the progress. Today, Bloemfontein, alhamdulillah, has progressed so much. So there is definitely progress being made, but it is very small, it's very little. Sheikh Dida, Mahroom Rahmatullah, the institute that I come from, which he has established a worldwide dawah center, about whom I heard another good message about him, of the work that he did, and only Allah knows the good people do. And he, till his last breath, he says, do da'wah. We've got literature out there, we've got Qurans for sale here. That's just, if you don't know that information, it's just free literature we got. Sheikh did that always. One thing he said, wallahi, he said, if I had the means, I'd flood the world with Islamic literature. He kept saying that. The Sheikh did a good job. I know there's not much for me to do. I just want to supplement 2 points on the importance of Al-Quran. We need to give the Quran in simple form to our non-Muslim brothers and sisters. Besides the other literature, if they ask for it, we must have it to give it to them. The IPCI has got one now in English only, which is a translation. It can never be the Quran, but at least it's easier for them to get a glimpse of what it is. Don't underestimate the impact of literature. We have to. Rasulullah was always told by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, your duty is to give the message. Who accepts or rejects is in my hands. I ask you one last question. The first hijrah that was made to where? Anybody knows? Abyssinia. In Africa, at that time, today it's Ethiopia. It was called Abyssinia. And who was the king? It was King Negus, a black man who was a Christian. Did the Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam say, don't go there, man, he's a black man there, he's a Christian man. Don't know what he's going to do. He says, go there to him. He's a good man. He will give you homage. He will give you protection.
No.
Let's think these things. Let's think these things of the Sunnah. We like to practice the Sunnah, but what suits us, you see? Selective morality we practice. But I want to go one step further. When that Sahaba who was sent and he started to read from Surah Maryam, because the Negus wanted the king, who was the mighty king of the Aksumite kingdom, King Negus, rahimahullah, when he said, show me what you believe in, and when he started reciting about Surah Maryam, what happened to King Negus? Tears started flowing from his eyes. He was a Christian, but he cried when he heard the truth. And he said, you can stay. You're staying. You're safe in Africa. Respected brothers and friends, we need to do a whole 180 degrees turn in our thinking and in our approach to things. And that's why we are here today. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept our efforts, accept your efforts for sacrificing to come here, and may He help all of us, our efforts, to get the message across. Remember, our job is not to convert nobody. We can't even do it. We have no power to do it. Our job is just to deliver the message and leave the rest to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Does anybody in the floor have any questions?
So we'll find out that being a Christian before, we would know what are the obstacles that prevent a Christian or a non-Muslim from entering into Islam. Looking at Islam, what obstacles are there that prevent a person from entering into Islam?
I think we're now in a materialistic world, and I think people are just scared just to, say that they actually believe in God. And there's lots of people that say that they believe in God. There's lots of new converts, if you like, in the UK that have converted to Islam, that have accepted Islam, but then they just carry on with their normal life. They don't, for whatever reason, seem to want to just give up, which is a materialistic way of life, which has been sucked into them and pushed into them by the governments. And I still think that for lots of people, if you approach a non-Muslim and they think, well, if I accept Islam, do I have to dress like you? Do I have to have a beard? Look at our young Muslims, our young Muslim youth. They have the designer stubble. Why do they have the designer stubble? Because unfortunately they're trying to impress the opposite sex. And this is being pushed, and it's pushed by the non-Muslims. You find very few young Muslims, youth, that go all the way to a full-grown beard. Even in the Darul in Zagreb, they have to, make sure that they, in their actual rooms, haven't got a pair of scissors and a shaver. So, but it's just because of all this hype from Western culture. But once someone then goes all the way, and the people that will go all the way are the women. As soon as they embrace Islam, they just go 100%. They're in the full hijab and everything. But like when you approach a non-Muslim and they're interested in becoming a Muslim, you've got to do it slowly. And that's how it was done with me. When I accepted Islam, it was slowly. Not as soon as you become a Muslim, you must grow a beard, you must do this, you must do that, you must do that. Slowly. For me, when I had spent 40 years as a non-Muslim, with all the filth and haram and disease and everything that was part of my life, it's someone who's like on drugs or who has an addiction, you can't just switch it off. It's a gradual decrease. It's the same for me. Gradually. So when we approach non-Muslims, don't hammer it down their throat. Gradually. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam always used, when he used to talk to the Sahaba, just give them a little bit at a time. Just a little bit at a time. And that's what we must do.
Brother Muhammad, they're asking you about your family, any success with them, and how they responded.
My parents died many years ago. I have one brother who's older than me. He knows I've accepted Islam, but he's not interested at all. He's never seen me as a Muslim. I have a funny suspicion that only Allah Ta'ala knows that if he saw me, he wouldn't be very impressed. But alhamdulillah, my students that I was teaching when I was a non-Muslim, when I came back when I was a Muslim, they accepted it, and they immediately started to call me Muhammad instead of Sir. And, but even when I was in Kenya with my wife, I get the abuse. I'm sure many of you do. Al Qaeda and Bin Laden, and when I go shopping, particularly with the Afrikaners, they can't believe this is a white guy with a red beard, and he's walking around with a black woman, which absolutely freaks them out. He's a white guy, he's a Muslim, and he's walking around with a black woman in a full hijab. So I get it all the time, but it shows that Islam is not just for the Arabs, it's not just for the Indians, it's not just for the Pakistanis. Islam is for the whole world. And I said to you, as Brother just said here, we must spread deen around the whole world. And just quickly, something that lots of Indian or Asian Muslims have said to me for many weeks. He said, the problem is, Muhammad, it's us. We don't seem to want to let go of our deen. We don't seem to want to spread deen. And, often I've been inside masjid and people don't want to talk to me, and you feel isolated. And, we've got to, particularly as a new Muslim, when you enter a masjid, you've got to feel at home. You've got to feel loved. I could have gone into many masjids in England where it's empty, but alhamdulillah, through Allah Ta'ala's grace, he took me to a masjid. As soon as I walked in, I was taken care of. In Kenya, there's many masjids where people accept Islam, and no one knows who they are. And they leave the masjid, because they're not looked after, they go straight back into Christianity. Islam is not just for us, it's not just for the Indians, it's not just for the Pakistanis, it's not just for the Arabs. Allah Ta'ala says, I will give deen to whoever I want. And we mustn't think that just accept, is for us. It can be taken away from us at any time. Islam is spreading to the West. And my brothers, the most strongest Muslims of today are the converts. And they are the ones that will spread deen. The Sahaba were non-Muslims. They are the ones that spread deen. The converts, the reverts, are the ones that will hold the flag. So don't shield Islam. It's not just for you, it's everyone. As soon as you see someone in the masjid who's a non-Muslim, go up to them, love them, embrace them, take them back home, give them food. Show them what Islam is. As I said to you, it's a religion of peace and it's a religion of love.
May Allah Ta'ala reward them and give them success in this world and the hereafter. May Allah Ta'ala give us also tawfiq of making amal, and I hope it has inspired us, these few words that they have given us today. اللهم صل على سيدنا ونبينا ومولانا محمد وعلى وسلم. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا يا مولانا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم برحمتك يا رب. الله الله الله
إلهي أنت الحليم العليم العظيم الرحيم السميع السميع البصير. إلهي أنت الحميد المجيد الرشيد الشهيد اللطيف الخبير.